Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Dragoncast, home of House of the Dragon. I'm your host and Maester of Ceremonies, Jamie East. We haven't got a guest this week because, that bloody tube strike in King's Landing, it's just driven everyone absolutely berserk. But joining me, as always, to discuss all things going on in House of the Dragon is journalist, writer, cook, celebrity chef newsletter author, and the brass knuckle dusters on the hand of the king. Is a proper hard geezer, this guy is. It's Chris Mandle. Hey, Chris. Yeah.
How's it going?
Very good. And I should say that one of the reasons that we haven't got a guest is that when we were kind of like looking ahead, and full disclosure, we are talking. It's Monday the 19th of September now. So we're very lucky and privileged that we get to see some episodes in advance. Without putting one finer point on it, the Queen's literally just gone into the ground, and we've just jumped on straight to talk about.
And I'm going on holiday tomorrow.
And you're going on holiday tomorrow. So it was a bit of there was a problem with booking a guest anyway, because they wouldn't have been able to have seen the episode because their privileges HBO privileges don't grant them that kind of special access. But having said that, it was also partly because I just felt like having watched episode 6, it feels like we started all over again, and there is so much ground to cover, probably about 10 years of ground to cover. So many new characters, so many new actors, so many new storylines that it felt like Chris and I just needed to catch up. It's been a while, babes, where it's just been me and thee. And
it's been 10 years.
It's been 10 years.
You haven't aged a day.
Oh my goodness me. So, okay. Let's talk about that first. So, episode 5 finished. The last thing we saw was Rhaenyra getting married, albeit in a rush, with a rat drinking the blood of Joffrey, the dead boyfriend of Laenor. So, Kristen Cole was saved from committing harry-carry by Alicent, presumably kind of to bring him on side. We didn't see what happened to Rhaenyra. Last thing we saw of Rhaenyra was she was carted off, thrown over the shoulder of
Harwin, I think.
Harwin
Strong was the
Breakbones Strong, and carted off into the distance. Well, as it turns out, quite prophetic that kind of moment. Chris, 10 years, 10 bloody years. Now we've had a lot of time jumps in House of the Dragon already. And we are only at episode 6 of season 1. We've already jumped to how far ahead have we jumped from episode 1 then?
So total, I'm just sort of back of the napkin maths, about 14 years, because I think there was 2 years between 2 and 3. There was 6 months at one point. There was maybe between
then another 3 years. So it's about 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
Which is bonkers. We never had that time jump, I don't think, in Game of Thrones. We have flashbacks and whatnot, but goodness me, it's quite a lot to get your head around at first, isn't it?
It is, and I think this episode is quite a lot. There is a lot to get into, because there is a lot of characters that have aged up. There are new characters. There are babies that are now infants. There are infants that are now children. There's, it does take a minute to get your bearing. But what I think is interesting about this episode is it largely takes place over one day. It sort of does jump ahead at the end. That is sort of classic Thrones. This actually felt like a Game of Thrones episode, because
it did.
There was a very concentrated storyline that involved lots of people, and there was loads of little storylines going on. And I made more notes this week than I ever have. Yeah. Because there was a lot to take in, and there was a lot of cues. And so I do think the jumping around has been really hard. I think it's about to settle down, although we really have got to the end of what we've seen in advance. We are going in blind.
Yeah, from now on, I don't think we get sent any more episodes unless we're
HBO are sick of us.
Yeah, they're
sick of us emailing them on bank holidays.
Sidebar. I'd just like to thank Megan so much. Lovely Megan at HBO. For getting our panicked text going, I've lost access to episode 6 in the middle of the Queen's funeral. So thank you.
But so it was a big scene setting episode, but I really felt like by the end of it there was the agenda was set, battle lines were drawn. Where do you want to start? Should we?
I think we should start. So and forgive me, listeners or viewers, this isn't me trying to teach a grandmother to suck eggs, but I think for the vast majority of, I'm going to say general viewers of House of the Dragon, not casual viewers, 'cause I don't think you can be a casual viewer, but certainly
not at all.
Viewers who don't sit there making notes like us, or don't. There's a lot to take in. Just even, I think there were 9 children now. There are 9
we
kids.
think I was. Yeah, it's a creche. King's Landing is a creche now.
So let's go through it chronologically,
sure.
And when there are sidebars to raise, i.e., whose is that kid, then we'll do that. So first things first, whose is that kid? Well, it's Rhaenyra's kid, who is now all grown up, as ye olde male online would have said in Westeros. Westerosi online would have said. Played by the incredible Emma Darcy.
Amazing.
The casting. I mean, we touched upon it at the end of as we said goodbye to Millie and Emily before. The casting of Alicent and Rhaenyra has just been almost just weird, so weirdly accurate. Because both of them have just been great, and by the end of this episode, I'd not forgotten about the younger versions because they were so good, but already just completely sold on where we are now. And Emma Darcy's just like, oh my god, she's fit.
It's incredible. So like, Olivia Cooke is playing Alicent Hightower. Literally looks like Emily Carey, like 8-9 years older. Like, it is unreal. And Emma Darcy is now playing Rhaenyra, who again looks like a more wiser, a little bit more ground down sort of than Millie Alcock was playing Rhaenyra, who was still kind of a bit punky and a bit sort of chipper,
a bit sassy.
You know, time has these two women have grown up, and they've both sort of borne the brunt of that period, because Rhaenyra has 3 children. So let's go through them. So the oldest is Dracarys, who's known as Jace.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know, because I'm like all the vowel A's and E's and I's and O's.
Oh my goodness!
And then the second one is Dracarys, who is known as Luke.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
And they're both very similar looking, mousy hair, sort of tuffled. They don't look like Targaryens, which we'll get to in a second. And then at the start of this episode, Rhaenyra gives birth to her 3rd son, who Laenor asks to name Joffrey,
which was the name of
his lover,
the mashed-in lover.
Yeah, exactly. So Rhaenyra has 3 sons, and Alicent has Aegon II, who was already
Boris. That was baby Boris.
That's right. Yeah. Who now looks like that kid of Stranger Things, I think.
Yes,
Finn Wolfhard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very
Alicent also has Helena, and then since then there's also another boy who is called Aemond. Literally, could they please pick some new names?
Okay, so that's 6 that we know of. And then should we touch upon the fact that we do get a glimpse of Daemon?
Yes, Daemon has spent this period. We saw him making looks at Laena Valerian at the wedding.
You sussed that out almost prophetically.
And honestly, I made a note of that before I saw the episode. I know we were like having a bit of fun with that, but that wasn't me being like, I know what happens next.
All right, Yuri Geller. Yeah. All right.
And so Daemon and Laena have wed, and I guess what is implied is that House Valerian weren't happy with that, maybe, because they've sort of gone and they've done a Harry and Meghan, and
they're on their world tour. Yeah,
they're on their world tour. They've got their
just signed a deal with
deal.
Spotify. Yeah, precisely.
And they've got twin girls called what are they called? They're called like Baela.
They've got Rhaena and Baela. I mean,
Rhaena and Baela.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, these names are getting really bad, aren't they?
Come on, George.
But they didn't really do a great deal, so I feel like I haven't really paid much attention to them.
No, but they're they're like cousins, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then Laena gives birth to to a child that doesn't survive, I think.
No, I don't think she even gives birth. I don't.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we should.
We'll touch upon. Well, I mean, we may as well touch upon. I think that the baby was still within her.
So it's still right,
and that was her.
Laena, kind of 2/3 of the way through the episode, knowing that she's going to be unable to give birth, knowing that this is futile, that she won't survive, goes to her dragon Vagar, and commands it to merge to alive.
Really great moment there. The kind of
incredible
the connection between her and her dragon, where the dragon was just kind of like, "Oh, come on, no, don't ask me to do this," and she was like, "No, it was quite moving."
It was incredible, and it's such a clever parallel between Viserys having to make the choice in episode 1.
Yes.
Daemon had the same choice,
and
different thing.
But interestingly, I don't think Daemon made the choice.
No,
and which I thought, I think one thing that I took away from episode 6 was actually a lot of role reversals going on. Going on. There was that parallel between Viserys and Daemon, whereas actually Viserys was pretty strong-minded in that. He was like, "Well, I want my son. That's the end of it. That's what's going to happen." And Daemon faltered and left it up to Laenor to solve the conundrum for him in the worst possible way. And then we've got Rhaenyra and Alicent, and actually in the younger iterations, Rhaenyra was the strong kind of like knows what's what kind of thing. Alicent was floundering and a little bit kind of doing a lot of 180s and realizing that she'd made a mistake in trusting this person, that person. And we find the two of those characters in polar opposites. And actually, it's weirdly, Rhaenyra she seems to have just like not lost the plot, but just kind of like literally, if you could summarize not giving a fuck, then surely it's Rhaenyra who, when someone, you kind of read stories about murderers or adulterers or someone, just they kind of cry for help and wanting to be caught.
Yeah.
And they kind of do things and they say, well, this was clearly them wanting to be caught and wanting someone to find the body or whatever.
Rhaenyra is basically quiet quitting as the heir to the throne.
Yeah.
Right? She's just like, I don't give a fuck anymore.
And I think someone says, to have one, to do this once is kind of like...
Yeah, Alicent says it.
Yeah,
to have
once
one...
is for love or something like that. But to do it 3 times...
The kind of thing this episode is that the political marriage that she made with Laenor 10 years on has just fallen apart.
It's just not worked.
Because she cannot keep her hands off Harwin Strong. She's got 3 children that don't look like Targaryens.
Yeah.
And everyone knows it.
Laenor is just kind of like...
Oh my god.
I mean...
Can we talk about talking of names in Westeros? I love that Laenor brings this guy home called Carl, who literally looks like the kind of guy you would pick up in a Spanish nightclub. It's literally like, oh yeah, he's got all these great stories. He's like really successful. I was like, Carl? You've picked up a man called Carl. And
everyone's met Carl before, haven't they? Yeah, exactly. He's
know,
really good at card tricks. Watch this.
You just know he's got a barbed wire tattoo on his bicep. You just know. And the best thing is by the end of the episode when Rhaenyra and Laenor are like, right, we're going to go to Dragonstone. She's like, bring Carl. We need all the help we can get. And like, Carl's eyes just lit up.
Yeah, he does like, bada bing, bada boom.
So I thought that was hilarious, but yeah.
I thought Laenor was really good in this episode. I thought it was actually quite a strong performance from the actor. Forgive me,
I don't know who that is, but he's kind of remarkable, isn't he?
Yeah, even when you go onto the Google House of the Dragon cast, it's still very confusing.
But like he's been told, listen, you're not allowed to, mess around with all these sailors and get drunk. But like he's seeing his wife having her fun and birthing children off the back of it, and they're both really at loggerheads. And what happens at the end of the episode is there is this resignation that we need to work together, and we need to put our heads together, and we might have to start fighting our enemies soon.
So yeah, tell me what your thoughts are, because at the beginning, when it kind of dawned on me what was going on with Rhaenyra and the kids, and part of me was just like, are they Kristen Coles? And then are they just insinuating that they're Breakbones' kids? And then we got into the whole kind of How to Train Your Dragon thing, and it turns out actually not. They're definitely his. They're definitely his kids when there was the scrapping in the sword fighting bit.
Yeah, the children are just constantly being pitted against each other.
Why do you think she chose to do that 3 times? Because she's not stupid. Was she?
I think it's begging the question.
Was she kind of like flaunting it in front because she knew that her father part of me thinks that, because there's been 2 times where, with Rhaenyra specifically, where Viserys has had this kind of conversation with someone where he's just like, what are you saying? Are you daring to say the unthinkable? Say it out loud. Say it out loud. The first one was with the being caught in flagrante with Daemon, and now it's about the parentage of his 3 grandchildren. And both times you kind of think, Viserys knows. He's not stupid, and we'll come on to Viserys in a minute as well. But why has she done that 3 times and just so
I think it's
brazenly?
A couple of things. I think it's she's got careless, but also I think the thing is, like, it's nobody's saying. No one actually says, I think they're bastards. No one's confident enough to say it, because it's treason to say that. And I think part of Rhaenyra is so comfortable being this close to power that that sort of that sharp-mindedness kind of atrophies. She's like, I've got away with it once. What are they going to do? Accuse me of an affair? And so somebody actually says something which is like, the king's protection is a very weak shield. And I think this episode, she realizes that protection has been fine when she was a child, but that man somebody says he is not going to live until he's an old man. He's
how
really
old do we
not
think
long
he
left.
is? Because he looked pretty old to me.
Honestly, I would probably guess 42.
Yeah, I suppose it's that old when you step into a Victorian house and the doors are all about 3 foot high. Yeah.
But I did see Paddy Considine say in an interview, I think it was actually in a podcast, he said it's leprosy. That's what he's portraying it as. It's not just a sort of general body rejecting the throne. It's that he is ill, and they literally, I mean, the medical care in Westeros is terrible, but even there, sort of like, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, even now, so he's lost an arm. That was clearly
arm.
That was clearly. We saw it in episode 5. It was all covered in what we thought was grayscale,
rot and stuff, wasn't it? Yeah.
So clearly, at some point, he's gone right. Enough with the leeches. The whole off with the arm is going to happen.
Part of me was impressed that he hadn't lost more, because he lost a hand in the space of like a year, and I thought, oh my god, he's just going to be like a head in a jar by this point. Because after 10 years,
kind of Westerosi iron lung,
they're just pickling him at this point. But yeah, they've clearly the leeches have been working to some degree. But I think, I mean, I don't think he's that old. But then again, I don't know, life expectancy in Westeros, like 60. So I don't know. But yeah, the feeling is he is not long for this world, and the protection that he offers. And there's sort of not a threat, because he's not a threatening figure, but the safety that is guaranteed with him is weakening. And I think that is what spurs Rhaenyra, that realization that, like, Harwin Strong has resigned, and Lionel Strong, his father, tried to resign as Hand of the King and was rejected, but nevertheless took his son home out of like, I need to get him away. There's just a sense that, like, Alicent has been really manoeuvring and playing the game. She's got Kristen Cole on her team. She's got Larys Strong is sort of in her corner. And she does seem, like, she's also got these sons that look like Targaryens, which I think Rhaenyra started to realise, like, my children really do not look like Targaryens. And
she should have really thought about that. I mean, I tell you, never has hair colour been such a decided factor.
Well, I think if they can do cesareans, I'm surprised they haven't got into wig making in Westeros yet.
Why peroxide, or do they not? Yeah, exactly.
But I think what is interesting, I just want to say quickly, is both women. I think the episode was about Alicent and Rhaenyra, really getting to see them as adults, and that relationship continue to deteriorate. But both of them are rendered very invisible by the act of having children, because for Alicent, the kids just look nothing like her. Yeah. And for Rhaenyra, the kids look nothing like her. And they've both had to do this thing, like have these kids. And they don't see any of themselves in there. There's no... For Alicent, it's like, it's a good thing that they're platinum blonde. Because their job is to look like Viserys. No one's like, oh, it's a shame they haven't got their mother's eyebrows or anything. Yeah. All of it is about that. And I thought it was interesting how both of those women were, sort of just there as vessels for the good of the realm.
None more present than with Rhaenyra's like the opening 10 minutes, the opening probably about 5 minutes, wasn't it, with the birth of Joffrey.
Joff.
The camera stayed pretty much tight on Emma Darcy's face throughout the whole thing, even as she was walking to see. It was almost like a tracking. It was like the beginning of a Goodfellas, but with umbilical cords. And just that determination not to let Alicent win, and I found it intriguing. Obviously we know now it was because Alicent wanted to see whether or not it had blonde hair or not.
Yeah, before they could swap it out potentially. I thought.
Yeah. I thought it was a phenomenal opener.
And how callous to make a woman who's just given birth do that. I think that's the thing with Alicent.
Well, I mean, strictly speaking, she didn't make her come. It was Rhaenyra that insisted on carrying the baby there themselves. They tried to rip the baby from her arms, and she said she'd go herself. But
that's right. Yeah. That's right.
What it did for me straight away was to show. Actually, callous is a good word. Is that Alicent has become really quite evil, and I'm not necessarily convinced it's to protect her children either. I think she's still harbouring a grudge because of Otto, Uella Otto. I'm almost certain we haven't seen the last of Otto.
Well, I think by the end of the episode, when Lionel Strong is burnt at Harrenhal, the thing I took was that Larys says to her, "You said you wanted your father back because you want more allies." Well, I took that to mean you want me to burn my own family down in a big castle.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure he did really. Yeah, I'm not sure he did really. We'll come on to that next, though. But in terms of Alicent, where's her head at now? So the kids are older, heirs are becoming a bit more apparent. She's furious that actually, I think, clearly the lineage would end with Rhaenyra because the three children are bastards, and in Westerosi rule, that ain't allowed, as we know with Jon Snow a few hundred years later. But is that all it's about? Is she just trying to? I don't know. What do you think?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's a big question.
Got to get Rhaenyra off.
So I think there's two things. I think Alicent has watched Viserys get frailer and frailer and realizes that Rhaenyra is more and more on the ropes. While this is happening, Rhaenyra's been getting lazier and lazier to the point where everyone kind of guesses that those aren't her kids. And so I think Alicent has been emboldened by her enemy getting weaker. And I think it's really about fortifying everything that she has in order to make sure that Rhaenyra's kids don't pose a threat. And I mean, yeah, it's like political sabotage most of this episode, isn't it? It's like
completely. Let's touch upon the kids. It's very difficult to I'm not a huge fan of young kids. It's in kind of like dramas because they're very difficult to cast and very they're clearly not going to be the best actors in the world, but they do have. I thought it was cast pretty well, and they did have the right level of snottiness to them.
Yes.
And actually, interesting dynamics, not just between the families, between Alicent's kids and Rhaenyra's kids, but actually between the three of them as well. The bullying and the heir and the spare idea.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether you know this. I'm throwing it on you a bit. I'm not prepped you for this, but the folklore with regards to having a dragon, I always assumed that they get given. That it's pretty straightforward. That as soon as you're born, you get given a dragon egg. It's then placed in that little crock pot, and a dragon is born. It's your dragon, and you immediately bond with it. It felt a little more complex than that here. There were lots of different kind of rules that I wasn't, or maybe I wasn't. I've not been paying attention close enough. But some of the Targaryens didn't have a dragon yet.
Yeah, so I think it's complex because essentially there are less dragons than there are Targaryens.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know what the sort of mating period is like, but
because they said when such and such has a brace, hopefully they'll have. So
Syrax, which I think was Rhaenyra's dragon, they were like when Syrax has a clutch of eggs. Let's just backtrack slightly. So in the context of this, Rhaenyra said to Alicent at this small council meeting, "Listen, this has got to end this animosity. So I want my son, Aegon, to marry Helena. I want our children to form a union." Alicent doesn't want that because they're bastards, essentially. And she knows it, and Rhaenyra knows it, and that's why Rhaenyra's
trying to get one away. Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden Rhaenyra doesn't mind children being wedded to other children, or, because this is something that she didn't want when she was a child, but now she understands how that is going to guarantee safety for a generation. And Alicent rejects it because she can probably find a better suitor, and I think she has the line, "How sweetly the fox speaks when it is cornered by the hound." Rhaenyra is offering up her her firstborn heir to the throne because that's how desperate she is. Yeah. And when they're talking about it, Rhaenyra says that Aemond gets first dibs on one of Syrax's eggs because he doesn't have a dragon. And so essentially the firstborns get first pick. Right, and for Aemond, who is the second of Alicent's sons, he hasn't got one yet, and that's why they play that prank where they get him a pig. And it's just to sort of humiliate him a bit, where they're like,
that felt proper Game of Thrones. That felt like. Do you remember when the Joffrey's wedding, when they did the play? There was a pig involved in that, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Did they not bring a
pig
pig
had
out?
Tyrion riding a pig because he was too small to ride a horse. I thought there was a lot of texture in that. I thought it was really nice, and that bit where the children were, I think it was Jace, Rhaenyra's eldest son. He has this little dragon that he is kind of going to meet. It's sort of like puppy training, I think, where once a week he'll go.
Lovely little thing, wasn't it? Really cute.
Yeah. So he was kind of training it, and he said halt, and he said stop, and come here, and he said Dracarys, and it killed that poor goat. There was a really amazing shot where they zoomed in on the goat, and the goat sort of goes, like he knows. For people not watching this and listening, I just pulled a sort of startled expression because I thought it was a good little. I thought it was a bit of a nod to Jurassic Park. Yeah, it was really fun, and it was the sort of thing that has sort of been missing, this real interior texture. But I thought that whole scene was really interesting because I have been saying on this podcast for weeks, what is the deal with the dragons? Like, do they just live in the cave? The answer is yes, and they seem to hate being down there. Yeah. But the thing that I thought was interesting, how much one of those sort of like janitors, for lack of a better word, says to Jace, once you have bonded, once you're bound to this dragon, it will obey you to the word. It will do everything. And we see that with Laena towards the end of the episode, where she can literally command the dragon to like kill her. Yeah. And the dragon does hesitate. It's sort of weird watching a dragon do the sort of equivalent of the tram conundrum. Do I do this or do I do that? But I thought all that was really helpful. But the dragon eggs is a real bargaining chip for families when they're negotiating. And the other thing we should reference, Laena, Daemon's new wife, has Vhagar, this absolutely humongous dragon.
So that's the biggest dragon in the world.
Biggest dragon in the world.
As far as we know, apart from the mysterious one that no one's seen for ages. What was that one called?
My understanding is that is the mysterious one that no one has seen for ages. Because in episode 2, when Laena was tiny and she was walking with Viserys, she was like, what about that massive dragon? And he said, it flew away. Like, no one knew where it is. And it's an incredible detail because now it's Laena's like, I bagged it. I bagged a big dragon. Amazing. It was wild. Amazing detail. An amazing world building. But
I love stuff like that.
I would have loved just a little bit more about that process. Because when the dragon is literally the size of like,
When do we see that bonding take place? And can it be transferred? Can that be transferred? Because it must be able to be. Because
I imagine you can, because I think Viserys inherited his dragon Balerion. I think Balerion. I think he
so
inherited
now
that.
Theoretically, without wanting to kind of like, I know the grave's still warm and stuff. The seat's still warm, but there is the world's biggest dragon now without a rider.
Yeah, and I sort of think, dragons do have multiple riders, I believe. And I imagine my instinct is that children may better inherit one of their parents' dragons. Right. And we did see Laena and Daemon have 2 girls. Maybe one of them will end up riding it. But, it's something that I think could be quite dense and it could be quite hard to get across to people. But that is, I think, a really, really cool detail that absolutely massive dragon was mentioned all the way back in episode 2, and that little girl even then was like, so it's wild, like, where is it? Have you seen it? We can hear it sometimes at Driftmark, because of course Driftmark is in the sea. I think it's really cool, and props to them for sort of making sure that is consistent.
Absolutely. Before we head off for a quick break, I want to ask you this. Because at the beginning Rhaenyra was pretty belligerent and headstrong and kind of like classic Love Island. It is what it is. Deal with it, eh?
Yeah.
Deal with it. Bit of sass. And then, like you said, by the time she got to the small council, she was, for want of a better word, shitting herself.
Yeah.
What was the turning point? What was the moment for you where that actually happened then? Because I can't remember it being abundantly obvious to me where there was a bit of a light bulb moment where she was just like, oh shit.
I think that's the difficult thing with these jumps is we don't see these light bulb moments. We just see the light is on. You see that something has changed. I think Rhaenyra is beginning to fear Alicent because of her influence at court. You can see in that meeting, Rhaenyra was less sort of commanding the room and less sort of, Alicent was the one that decided when things were over, that Viserys needed to rest. And even when Alicent asked everyone to sit back down and listen because she proposed this marriage pact, everyone sat down except Alicent. And I think that was like, you don't tell me to sit down, like a real fuck you. So to sort of to circle back to that, where did it come from? I think it's been part of this jump, and I think that might be something we've lost. But just that sense that Rhaenyra
I just thought that at the beginning of the episode, she just within this episode, she changed her tone somewhat. And I don't know whether it was because I think for me, it may have been when she kind of fell out with Laenor and realised that actually he's just a fucking lost cause now. She can't rely on him to kind of keep up pretense because he's becoming too gregarious and a bit too flamboyant, a bit too open about their arrangements.
Like he's been out in Flea Bottom, she said.
Flea Bottom. I mean,
we know that's the rough
and we
part
all know
of
what
town.
happens in Flea Bottom.
What happens in Flea Bottom stays in Flea Bottom.
Well,
it's supposed to.
Ask Carl that. Tell that to Carl.
That's where he found Carl. But I do think it's interesting because I think they ended the episode as a team, and I think part of it is Rhaenyra going, look, as long as I've got him, I've got House Valerian on my side.
Yeah.
No, and I can't lose them because I haven't really got anyone. It's not enough to have a sort of lover who no one knows about because his house can't come to my aid either.
Yeah.
My only thing I would say is about Harwin Strong, just really quickly, is she spent ages looking for a guy. Couldn't she have gone with Harwin Strong to begin with? Was there a reason that, like, was he not available? Was he? He's head of the city.
Kristen Cole was literally stood outside a bedroom. It was a lot easier.
Yeah, I guess so.
He didn't have to wait for that awkward Uber.
Did you see? Did you see though Rhaenyra using that secret entrance again in this episode when she went out? She snuck out, and that's when she overheard. It must connect to loads of different stairwells because she snuck out, and that's when she overhears Lionel Strong and Harwin Strong talking about her and how grave the situation is. And again, I just love.
There you go. That was the point. That was the turning point. Where she
of course. Yeah, that's when she realizes because for the hand to want to resign.
Yeah, precisely.
Which is therefore because she knows. I bet you're so right. That's when she realizes if the hand resigns, Otto's going to come back.
Yeah, precisely.
I'm even more outnumbered. That's exactly it.
Right. Well, I tell you what, it's a good point. Good place to go for a quick break. Quick message from our sponsors, because when we come back, we are going to delve into House Strong, or House clearly not so strong, called the Fire Brigade.
House Flammable.
Yeah. Welcome back to episode 7 of Dragoncast, home of House of the Dragon, talking about episode 6, confusingly, of House of the Dragon. I'm Jamie East, and with me, as ever, is Chris Mandle. Lots to get through on this episode. New characters, new cast, we've talked about so much already. But as we move into, I guess, the latter part of episode 6, and what was a pretty a shocking twist, I think, and also introduced, I think, further cemented what is easily going to be one of my favourite characters, I think, in this whole saga, because we don't half love a villain. I think it's about time that this week's wisdom touched upon a house that we know nothing about, really. We didn't know much about the Hightowers or the Valerians, although they were mentioned in the Game of Thrones books. But how Strong are very, very kind of like obscure. Let's delve into them right now, shall we? House Strong is a noble house from the Riverlands who can boast descent from the First Men. Their seat is Harrenhal. Their sigil is a tripartite with blue, red and green on a white background, representing the three forks of the trident. They have no known words. During Aegon's conquest, House Strong followed House Tully in rebelling against Harrenhal, the last king to rule over the Iron Islands and the Riverlands, and the builder of Harrenhal, choosing instead to support House Targaryen. This would prove a wise decision, as Aegon's dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, would roast Harren and his sons in the tallest tower of the fortress he had built. Aegon would name Sir Osmond Strong his hand, and Sir Osmond would oversee the construction of the wall around King's Landing. Sir Lucamore Strong was the victor of the Grand Melee held for the completion of the Dragon Pit in 55 AC, and the following year King Dracarys I of Targaryen appointed him to his Kingsguard. Lucamore would break his vows of chastity by marrying 3 women and fathering 16 children. That is, I would consider that a firm breaking of chastity. If you're going to break chastity, do it like that. Marrying 3 women and fathering 16 children, earning him the moniker Lucamore the Lusty. There you go. That's the tattoo I'd want. His brothers discovered this. It was his nickname. It's like, yeah, love that. Did you know they're calling Lucamore the Lusty? They've discovered that and informed the king, who ordered them to castrate him and banish him to the Night's Watch. Now, Lord Lionel Strong would serve Viserys I Targaryen as Master of Laws from 105 AC. Lionel brought 2 maiden daughters and 2 sons to court with him. The girls became handmaids to Princess Rhaenyra. Their elder brother, Sir Harwin Breakbone Strong, was made a captain of the Gold Cloaks. The younger brother, Larys the Clubfoot Strong, joined the King's Confessors. Lionel would later replace Sir Otto Hightower as Hand of the King when King Viserys stripped Otto of the position. Now, brings us bang up to date. Lionel's son, Sir Harwin Strong, would supplant Sir Criston Cole as sworn shield to Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, and it wasn't long before rumours circulated he was actually the true father of her 3 children by Prince Laenor Velaryon. And as we've learned in Westeros, rumours can be fatal. Now, as far as we know now, Larys is the only surviving heir to House Strong, for reasons we'll go into, and the new Lord of Harrenhal. But as for what heights the Clubfoot may eventually reach, only the gods know. I'm twirling my moustache. Round of applause for Larys Strong. Can I just say, easily my favourite character.
Yeah.
He steals every scene.
He's so weird, and he's just so sort of sinister, and it's just, yeah. I think it's one of those things where I wish he'd come in sooner, because I think it would have. I think for people that were still finding their feet with this show, knowing there is a Weasley little gossip that burns his own family alive would really sell.
The signs have been there.
Yeah,
right from the off. Yeah. You know, I think he has. This has been his plan all along. You know, from I think the first time we saw him properly was at the
stag hunt.
The stag hunt, where he kind of just do you mind, ladies? Do you mind if I sit here because I'm so decrepit? I'm not allowed to be with the big boys, and you know, I think that's all part of his game, and it's just been beautiful to watch. And there was the brilliant scene in episode 5 where he did you not know that Rhaenyra drank the tea? I hope. I hope she's okay. I do hope it wasn't the morning after pill.
He was she must have been very ill, because she drank this many cups and it's very strong. And it's like he didn't name the tea, but he was just like.
And it was delivered by the Grand Maester. I mean, that
so it must
really
be a secret recipe.
Yeah. And his great quote was, "When one is seldom asked to speak, one learns to observe," which is just, I
think the way that they didn't introduce him, you know, I just sort of said a minute ago, I wish we'd had a bit more fanfare, but the whole point is that he's just sort of crept in, which is really clever. And this episode, it's clear that he's got a bit of a rapport with Alicent. She got home to find him already eating a bit of meat pie.
Yeah, they kind of arranged a bit of a. It struck me as almost quite fag-haggy, where he's kind of he's a little confidant. Come on, you go and have the small council, and we'll come back and we'll have a little bit of a.
He's very like Varys, I think, but with the sadism of Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah, and there's obviously a bit of Littlefinger in there as well for manoeuvring. Yeah, 100%. Which is why I think I believed Alicent when the shock at what he did, I believed Alison where she genuinely didn't mean that. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. He planted those words in her mouth so that he could say, "Oh no, but I thought when you said that's what you meant." And it was like, well, no, I said we must do something. I didn't say burn your dad and brother.
He was like, did you not explicitly tell me to lock them in the tower? Because I did.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, especially on a show like this, where like your name and your identity is so important, for him to kind of massacre and mutilate his own family to achieve his own ends, that is really scary. It's one thing to do a red wedding and kill other people that you don't like. Yeah. He killed off his father and his brother, who had
maybe, I would imagine, because he's a little bit of Tyrion there. He's been clearly been the weaker sibling for a long time.
But he said it's best to make your way through life unencumbered, and he says that love stays the hand. The right thing to be done can be sort of it can be challenged by love, and I think what he means is when you don't have anyone that you care about, you can do the clear-headed right thing, and I think it's terrifying. It's really scary. But he also ends the episode with the quote, "I feel certain you'll reward me when the time is right." I mean, it's huge sort of blackmail vibes, but also, you know, that is kind of the person you want running your, you know, gossip mongering operation, right? Like, and I don't think he is Master of Whispers at this point, but I think it stands to reason that, like, that's what he's going for, right? That's the job he wants, clearly.
I loved his kind of crew of heavies. They all reminded me of the Son of Harpy. So the little gold scarab. I want one of those gold scarab beetle pin badges.
So he went to the prison. Yeah, he went to the prison and he got some people that were due to be hanged, and he said, "Listen, I'll get you out, but you've got to work for me." And they get their tongues cut out so they can't talk about what they're doing. Yeah. And he sent them to burn Harrenhal down, which is just chilling. It was absolutely chilling. But just, that is real, you know, I think that is a real threat to everyone. Everyone needs to be scared of this guy because he's got no loyalties. He's got no allegiances.
So what is his end game then? His end game, I think, is probably to see Alicent on the throne, or at least certainly safe, because that will secure his standing in things, and he will become maybe the hand of the Queen Consort.
I think exactly that. I think that's exactly it. I think he just wants power. He wants to sort of sow chaos and climb the ladder, as Littlefinger will go on to say. Yeah. And I think, he has done Alicent a big favour, because having Otto around will really help.
Yes.
But it's just that Faustian thing of like, oh right, you've caught, and also bearing in mind what he has given Alicent is, I have killed Rhaenyra's lover and the father of her children. Like, that's devastating. That is huge.
Yeah. The impact that's going to have is going to be pretty mental. But let's talk about this kind of weird triangle that Alicent's built herself. Her kind of her glam squad.
Yeah,
has been kind of like, it's just built on blackmail, completely and utterly. You know, there's no love there. There's no honor there. There's no sense of having each other's back because you care about each other, or it matters to anything other than the fact that it's personal gain. So Alicent, I guess, blackmailed Kristen Cole. Why did she stop Kristen Cole from
because I think she saw that he would be better served in her pocket than dead.
We didn't see Rhaenyra. I think we saw Rhaenyra walk past him once, didn't we?
Oh yeah, very icy. They clearly aren't in touch anymore, and he's Team Alicent, which I think is interesting.
He shot his shot, and the orange and cinnamon boat is still circling the harbour.
I think also though, like, I think he was quite horrified that he did. You know, he's not supposed to have sex. He's not supposed to have children or land or anything in that job, and I think he was horrified that he let himself get lured in, and I think he's probably quite repulsed by it, because he sort of said in last week's episode, he was talking about I've come from nothing, like all I have is honor, all I have is the stuff I've earned, like you can fuck around to Rhaenyra, you can do this because you're protected, and I think
all I've got is this cloak.
And if I take that off slowly, because it's so many buckles, I'm giving up that. And he sort of said to her in that last episode before the jump, let's like run away and we don't have to be anyone. And she was kind of like, no, I quite like being a Targaryen. I quite like being minted. I just don't want to, I just want to like fuck you on the side. And I think that is the thing that he just realised he'd sacrificed everything for Rhaenyra and he was never going to get.
He was just a side piece.
Yeah. So, very interesting. I think he's, a very good confidant of Alicent. And then she's obviously got Larys strong as well.
Okay, so guessing, I think we can make a pretty safe assumption that Otto is going to return as Hand of the King. What do you think he'll make of Alicent's BFFs then? Do you think she'll confide to him in what's happened?
No, I think the next job for that entourage is, listen, this is all speculation until the king dies. The big obstacle preventing Alicent from being Queen Regent or for Aegon II to be the next king is Viserys. So I think Otto and her team are going to figure out a plan to finish the king off. I mean, it would not take much, would it? The guy can't even
literally just like some, not a lot, bit too much salt in a
tell him an off-color joke, he'll probably have a heart attack. Like, did you hear the one about the 3 dragons? And then he's gone.
Did you notice also how much further his model of old Valyrian's come on?
Yes.
It's now filling the whole of his room. I thought that was brilliant.
I think it's really interesting that his obsession with the past is crowding out his world. He's literally having to inch around it practically, isn't he? And that's also, I mean, I texted you this earlier, didn't I? That like the intro is definitely changing every week, and as the branches of the family are growing, I think that's being reflected in the channels of blood. Yeah. Having said that, I cannot make head nor tail of it. So if anyone who's listening or watching wants to tweet us and just kind of like explain it, I would love that, because I tried.
It doesn't feel quite as literal as the Thrones one, did it?
I think what's hard is that they don't have their own sigils because they've all got the same sigils. So like I recognize Daemon's helmet with the wings in this intro in episode 6, and it splits off into 2, which is to symbolize his twins.
Right. Okay.
But it is kind of, I'd love. Yeah. First of all, if anyone's got any intel on it, let us know. Secondly, if anyone has seen an interview. Yeah, producer Conor is saying each symbol is a different family member, but I'm sort of missing it, or I'm like, oh, whose symbol is that sort of thing, or what? I don't recognise that.
Yeah, it's not quite as obvious, is it?
No, but it's very fun though, and that is obviously taking place in a model similar to the one in Viserys' bedroom. Producer Connor's just told us that it goes in the order of succession, the way that it kind of cascades. It's sort of like a champagne fountain, isn't it? But blood, which is a little bit less delightful. I tell you one thing I'd like to know, actually, Jamie, just before we, where do you? So we've kind of got the battle lines between Alicent and Rhaenyra. Where does Daemon fit into this?
Yeah, that's what he's clearly going to return. I think he seemed quite shocked at what he saw and the events that unfolded. I think he was quite happy in his lot. I think he felt like he'd almost like semi-retired. He was rich. His children were heir to a great house. I think him and Rhaenyra have now got unfinished business.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, now he's not got a wife.
He's not got a wife, but he's got money. Let's not forget he inherited his. He seems to do a good job of inheriting. He's got quite a few houses under his belt now as well. I think it's a tough one, isn't it? I felt like we saw a softer Daemon in this episode.
Yeah.
He didn't seem quite as angry or even kind of swashbuckling, kind of like he's normally had that Errol Flynn kind of air about him. It's a difficult one. I'd like to see him and Rhaenyra. Here's what I think.
Go on.
The only person that can save Rhaenyra is Daemon. Yeah. Against facing Alicent and Otto and Larys and Sir Kristen. Who has Rhaenyra got? She's got no one. She's got her husband, who's just banging Carl, She needs an ally. I don't think Laenor's long for this world.
No, I don't either. But House Valerian will back Rhaenyra because they're happy to go along with the lie that these are Laenor's kids.
Correct,
because
they would also be equally happy with a union between Rhaenyra and Daemon, because all of their kids are then are in one happy step family. I think she's going to have to reach out to Daemon and say, this is what's going to happen. If you don't come and help, then Alicent is going to do this, and we're all fucked.
We're all fucked. So the good thing is, I mean, Daemon, they said in this episode, Daemon said they've got 3 dragons, like him, his wife, and maybe one of their daughters has got one.
Yeah.
Rhaenyra's got her dragon. So I think we're going to start seeing, like, it's going to be a bit of who's got the most dragons.
A bit of a dragon swinging.
But I think we might also see them start to assemble their, like, if Rhaenyra's going to style herself queen, maybe Daemon will be her hand. Maybe her husband will be, like, master of ships because he's a Valerian. Like, maybe we're going to start seeing them sort of getting their sort of teams together, isn't it?
Well, Rhaenyra's gone to Dragonstone now, of course, as well.
Yeah, which is a good position because, that, right next, Driftmark and Dragonstone are next to each other. Mm-hmm. She'll have all the ships. She'll have House Valerian behind her. She'll have Rhaenys, her aunt or cousin, or I can't remember her relation. Their dragons. They've got a good sort of. I think the beginnings of a good team. I get the impression, and it wasn't mentioned in this episode, but the reason Daemon and Laena were in Pentos, I got the impression they were hiding from Corlys and the Valerians. So I'm interested in that.
Kind of almost exile, so like proper Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, because it was I just got the impression that there was it didn't quite make sense why they were there, and even Laena was like, "This is a bit beneath us, being sort of like paid to stay here."
Hired help. Yeah.
That Lord was like, "We'd love you to just live in this big house, but like we need your dragons. We've got this like problem over here."
Damon, did you know you could charge like £500 per cameo if you just do like video messages? Yeah, it was a bit like that, wasn't it?
Get an OnlyFans for the dragon, you can rake it in. I think that's interesting. He's the piece that I can't quite get my head around.
Yeah, I think he's definitely gonna have to come back.
But it was such a good episode, like so much. There was just so much to take in, and it does feel like part 2 is starting, and
definitely, and I'm the same. And clearly I'm biased, and I always will be team
we love
Thrones.
It. Yeah,
but I don't think you can't hold a torch to that episode to any other thing I've seen on telly for a long time, with maybe the exception of Succession.
But it feels like the equivalent of that phrase about a frog when you boil it alive. They don't know it's boiling because the heat is just gently going up constantly, and that's what I think this season is. It is really all building to something, and I think we've only got 4 episodes left.
Yeah, it's building to a war. We've clearly got Viserys has got to die. Otto's got to come back. Daemon and Rhaenyra have got to be doing something together. And like you say, Dragonstone's right next to
Driftmark.
I think, and we've already seen, back in Thrones, Dragonstone was seen as the foe of King's Landing. Because of Stannis was there, then Daenerys was there. It's always been, oh, holy shit, they've got Dragonstone. Yeah,
it's an incredibly helpful bit to hold because you're so close to King's Landing, but also you can retreat to Essos and also access to other parts. I think I'm really excited, but I've got no, we've got no clue. We're now in the hands of HBO. And night is dark and full of terrors.
Funnily enough, I'm going to leave you on this. Just a little sidebar. Someone messaged me on Twitter. Matt Scott, who's a friend of Thronecast, a friend of the show, very old friend of mine, works at Sky. In fact, edited a lot of Thronecast. Messaged me and said, you were talking about how. No characters can be in House of the Dragon because it's 172 years. It was like, what about the Red Witch?
She was like 200 years old or something.
She could be bombing around somewhere. So we'll leave you on that. Chris, I've loved chatting to you about this.
Such a pleasure. What an amazing... I can't believe we get to do this every week.
Oh, it's a joy. It's a joy. Best
It's
job
so
in the
much
world.
fun. I cannot
Thanks
wait
so much
for
for
episode
listening
10.
or watching. Hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have and as Chris has. If you've got any thoughts, any comments, we do read every single one. Just tweet us at Dragoncast_pod or email dragoncast@daftdoris.com or leave a comment underneath in the YouTube comments. Let us know your thoughts. It does feel like a bit of a reset, so maybe next episode we'll take a bit of time and go through all of your comments and your theories and all of that stuff. So get your theories in. What the hell is Damon up to? That's what we want to know. And are we too early? No, I'm going to say, what's the last scene of episode 10 going to be?
Oh, oh.
Get in early. Next week. So, Chris, I'll leave you to think about it.
Okay.
What's the last scene of episode 10 going to be? What is that cliffhanger going to be? Until next time, my friends. Dracarys. There will be a new episode of Dragoncast, home of House of the Dragon, every single week. Do us a favour, subscribe, like, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think of the podcast. Follow us on Twitter at dragoncast.pod or send us an email, dragoncast@daftdoris.com. Thanks very much.